One man crossed the Alps and brought Rome to its knees. The Alps, 218 BC. Exile. Betrayal. Poison. Yet his ghost would haunt Rome forever. Hannibal Barca. Terror of Rome. The dust of war still lingers across the Italian countryside. For over a decade, the name Hannibal Barca has haunted Roman dreams like a shadow too dark to escape. He was the man who crossed the Alps with elephants, who shattered Rome's legions at Cannae, who made senators tremble that their city itself might fall. But history has a cruel rhythm. Rome, battered yet unbroken, begins to rise from the ashes of its defeats. And Hannibal, the genius who once seemed invincible, is about to face the slow turning of fate's wheel. This is not simply the story of battles. It is the story of a man pitted against the greatest republic of the ancient world. A struggle between destiny and determination, brilliance and resilience. Every triumph Hannibal wins only tightens Rome's resolve. Every setback Rome suffers only hardens its will. In this chapter, we witness Hannibal at the height of his power, and we begin to trace the first cracks in the legend. From the burning plains of Herdonia to the betrayal of allies, from fleeting victories to the rise of a new Roman commander who will match Hannibal's cunning. This is where the tide begins to turn. Hannibal's tale is one of genius, but also of tragedy. The Punic Wars were not merely a clash of armies, but a collision of the civilizations, a fight to decide who would dominate the Mediterranean, and perhaps the future of the world. Question for you: if you were a Roman citizen at the time, would you believe your city could still survive against a man like Hannibal? At the height of the Second Punic War, Hannibal Barca seemed unstoppable. In just a few short years, he had achieved what no other general had dared. He had marched across the Alps with a multinational army, descended into Italy, and inflicted crushing defeats on Rome itself. The Roman legions, once thought invincible, had been shattered at Trebia, annihilated at Lake Trasimene, and utterly destroyed at Cannae. Tens of thousands lay dead. Entire Roman armies vanished in single afternoons. Cities that once bowed to Rome now defected to Hannibal's side. To many, it looked as though the Republic's fate was sealed. But history is rarely so simple. Rome, even in the face of disaster, refused to yield. Unlike other states that might have surrendered after such staggering defeats, the Romans displayed an almost terrifying resilience. They replaced lost armies with new ones, year after year, calling on the manpower of Italy's vast allied network. Instead of meeting Hannibal in open battle, a mistake they had paid for in blood, they turned to a new strategy: attrition and delay. The Senate appointed Fabius Maximus as dictator. Nicknamed Cunctator, the delayer, Fabius avoided direct confrontation. He shadowed Hannibal's movements, striking only at supply lines, denying him food, harassing his foragers, and forcing him to wander through Italy with no decisive victory. This Fabian strategy infuriated Romans eager for revenge. But in time, it proved crucial. Rome could outlast Hannibal, so long as it refused to give him the one great battle he sought. Meanwhile, Hannibal faced his own limits. His genius was undeniable, But his position was precarious. He was deep in enemy territory, with no secure supply chain and no reinforcements from Carthage. Italy's allies were fickle. Some cities turned to him, but many others stayed loyal to Rome, fearing its inevitable return to power. Hannibal had brought Rome to the brink of collapse, but he could not land the final blow. The war entered a new phase, a brutal stalemate. Hannibal roamed the Italian countryside like a predator, always dangerous, always lurking, but unable to strike a killing wound. Rome adapted, learned from defeat, and slowly regained the initiative. New leaders like Publius Cornelius Scipio were rising, men who had studied Hannibal's tactics and would one day use them against him. Thus, the inciting incident of this epic struggle is not merely Hannibal's rise, but Rome's refusal to fall. The Republic, battered and bloodied, stood firm against the storm. What had begun as Hannibal's war of annihilation would transform into a test of endurance, a clash not just of armies, but of wills. The stage was set, a Carthaginian genius at his peak, and a republic determined to fight to the last breath. The question was no longer whether Rome could survive, but how it would turn the tide against history's greatest enemy. Questions for the audience. If you were a Roman senator after Cannae, would you have supported Fabius's cautious strategy, or pushed for another decisive battle against Hannibal? Do you think Hannibal could have won the war if Carthage had sent him reinforcements? Or was Rome's resilience simply unbeatable? Hannibal's genius did not fade after Cannae. The years that followed still carried the thunder of his victories, and Rome's allies continued to tremble under the shadow of his army. In 212 BC, at Herdonia, Hannibal once again showed his uncanny ability to outmaneuver Roman commanders. The Roman consul Gnaeus Fulvius Flaccus, overconfident and careless, was lured into battle. Hannibal's forces encircled the Romans with the same precision he had displayed at Cannae. Another legion was cut down. Herdonia was left desolate, its fields soaked in blood. Only a year later, in 211 BC, Hannibal repeated this dark masterpiece near the same city. This time, he crushed the army of the praetor Gnaeus Fulvius Centumalus, killing thousands. Once again, the Roman heartland reeled. To the people of Italy, it seemed as though no Roman army could stand against the Punic general. His reputation had grown to near mythic proportions. A man who could read the battlefield like others read a scroll. Yet, for all the brilliance of these victories, their strategic weight was lighter than they appeared. Each triumph drained Carthage's limited strength. Each loss wounded Rome, yes. But Rome was learning, adapting, hardening. In southern Italy, Hannibal captured Petelia, a Greek city whose citizens had stayed loyal to Rome despite years of siege. They fought bravely, starving before surrendering. But eventually, exhausted, they opened their gates. Hannibal's victory here was symbolic. Rome's allies could be broken, their loyalty not unshakable. Still, their desperate resistance revealed another truth. Rome inspired not just fear, but devotion. Rome's resilience began to show in unexpected ways. Even as Hannibal marched through Italy, Rome struck elsewhere. In 209 BC, the city of Tarentum, once lost to Hannibal in a daring night raid, was retaken by Roman forces under Quintus Fabius Maximus. the same man whose cautious tactics had once been mocked. Tarentum's fall signaled that Hannibal could no longer hold all the prizes he had won. For the first time, the tide seemed to shift. The wider Mediterranean echoed this change. The Greek world, which had once looked to Hannibal as a possible liberator from Roman power, hesitated. Some cities remained neutral, others sided cautiously with Rome. The dream of a great coalition between Carthage and the Hellenistic kingdoms never materialized. Hannibal's victories in Italy, no matter how dazzling, remained isolated sparks rather than a flame that consumed the Republic. The years of rising action thus became a paradox. Hannibal continued to defeat Roman armies, yet Rome refused to die. The Republic endured disaster after disaster and still summoned new armies from its seemingly bottomless reserves of men. Slowly, painfully, the balance began to change. Hannibal's brilliance illuminated the battlefield, but Rome's endurance was shaping the war itself. This tension between the promise of Hannibal's genius and the inevitability of Rome's recovery defined the middle years of the conflict. For every Herdonia, there was a Tarentum. For every city forced to surrender to Hannibal, there were others that clung desperately to Rome. The war had become not just a struggle of armies, but of will, loyalty, and endurance. Which of Hannibal's later victories do you think mattered more, Herdonia or Petelia? Do you believe Rome's recovery was inevitable, or could Hannibal have broken the Republic if more allies had joined him?